Millionaire woman shocked to see her daughter hug the gardener as if he were her father. That afternoon, the house seemed to lose a heartbeat. The noise of traffic outside, the tapping of a keyboard inside her office, all faded as Clara looked through the long glass corridor. Out there, across the lawn, Emma, her 6-year-old daughter, was running with all her might. Her pink dress fluttered in the breeze, her tiny feet landing on the stepping stones as though she had only one destination. But Emma was not running toward her mother. She was running toward the man bent over near the wooden fence at the edge of the yard. He wore an old t-shirt, dark jeans dusted with sawdust, his calloused hands still gripping a hammer. At the sound of the child's voice, he lifted his head. In that instant, Clara caught a flicker of surprise. An invisible string pulled taut in his eyes, trembling as if it had been waiting to be touched. "Daniel!" Emma cried, and before he could react, she threw herself into his arms. The embrace happened naturally, instinctively, as if two souls had recognized each other long before this moment. Daniel froze for a split second, blinking rapidly as though chasing away a memory that had come rushing back. Clara stepped out onto the porch, her voice firm but trembling beneath the surface. "Emma!" The girl startled, letting go, her bright eyes still glistening. "Mom, he's really nice." "Go back inside, and please don't touch her again." Clara spoke, though her gaze lingered more on Daniel than on her daughter. Daniel said nothing. He simply stood still, his hand slowly loosening, his eyes following mother and child as they disappeared into the house. For a brief moment, Clara could hear her own heart pounding, because that look was not the look of a stranger. It was the gaze of a past she had buried 6 years ago. That evening, Clara sat at the dining table, unable to taste a single bite. The image of Emma in Daniel's arms replayed again and again. Too familiar, too dangerous. It couldn't be, after all these years, the truth standing right at her doorstep. The next morning, when Clara drew open the bedroom curtains, she saw Daniel outside, carefully fitting wooden slats into place. From an upstairs window, Emma waved with a radiant smile. Daniel responded almost without realizing, his lips curving gently. Clara gripped the fabric of the curtain, her breath caught in her chest. She knew, from the very moment Emma called his name, that the fragile wall she had built over 6 long years had already begun to crack. That night, Clara barely slept. In the dim room, only the desk lamp cast light on unfinished files. But instead of reading, she sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the blank wall. In her mind, fragments of memories surged back as though the silence of 6 years had only been a pause. Back then, Clara was barely in her 20s, fresh out of law school. She returned to her family's country estate, where her parents often spent weekends. There, a young carpenter worked, steady hands shaping wood, fixing creaking doors. His name was Daniel Hayes. At first, their exchanges were nothing more than brief greetings. Clara would sit on the porch reading, and Daniel would often smile when he caught her stealing glances at his work. Gradually, small conversations stretched into late afternoons. He spoke about traveling with his father from one workshop to another, about his dream of owning a small woodworking shop someday. Clara laughed, saying she wanted to be a strong lawyer, someone capable of steering her own life. That summer, they fell in love. No fireworks, no grand declarations. Just quiet presence, his calloused hand holding hers as they walked beneath the maples, her laughter spilling out as she fumbled with a chair she tried to build, while Daniel patiently fixed every crooked nail. But their world did not last. Clara's father, a stern businessman, discovered the relationship. He disapproved vehemently. "What kind of future can a carpenter offer you?" His words struck like a blade, severing every hope. The pressure was relentless. Clara fought back, but soon grew exhausted, and when she discovered she was pregnant, fear flooded her. She knew Daniel would fight for their love, but she also knew her father would destroy his life if the truth ever came out. So Clara vanished. She told her family she had to move to the city for a law internship. In reality, she walked away from the estate, from Daniel, from everything, without a single explanation. Months later, alone, Clara gave birth to Emma. To friends and relatives, she let them believe Edward, the man who once proposed but quickly abandoned her, was the child's father. It was the simplest shield, a convenient lie that kept Daniel outside the circle of their lives. Now, watching Emma smile so brightly at Daniel, Clara felt her heart tear in two. She knew the truth could not stay buried forever. His name, his eyes, his every gesture, they all mirrored the past. Outside, the house lay in silence, but within Clara, past and present had begun to collide, carving cracks she wasn't sure she had the strength to mend. In the days that followed, Clara tried to enforce distance. She told Emma not to go outside alone, asked the housekeeper to keep an eye on her. But the walls Clara built were never high enough. Emma always found her own way. Sometimes she begged to bring cookies to the carpenter. Sometimes she scribbled a drawing, hiding it behind her back until the exact moment Daniel passed by, then rushed forward to hand it over. One afternoon, Daniel was fastening loose planks on the porch roof when he heard the light patter of small feet. Emma stood there, her eyes sparkling, holding out a folded sheet of paper. "This is for you." Daniel wiped his hands quickly and took it. On the crayon-colored page, a man in a cap stood hand in hand with a little girl beneath a row of trees. "This is me?" he asked, half laughing. "Yes, and that's me," Emma replied, her voice full of innocence. Before Daniel could say another word, the girl wrapped her arms around him. A sweet mix of children's shampoo and fresh-cut wood surrounded him, and for a fleeting moment he closed his eyes. In that instant, an old feeling rushed back, the sense of belonging to something. From the upstairs window, Clara witnessed it all. She froze, her fingers unconsciously gripping the window frame. Something in that sight both moved her and terrified her. In the mornings that followed, Emma's questions became routine. "Mom, can I show Daniel my drawings?" "Mom, can I sit outside while he's working?" Clara tried to keep her voice calm. "Only if I'm close by." But deep down, she knew that her restrictions only made the longing in those innocent eyes grow stronger. To Emma, Daniel quickly became indispensable. When he fixed the wobbly chair in the dining room, she squealed with delight. When he built a swing in the corner of the yard, her laughter rang out across the garden. From a distance, Clara felt the control slipping from her hands. And yet, she could see an empty place in her daughter's heart being filled. That, more than anything, was what she feared most. On Thursday evening, while Clara was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. At first, she thought it was a delivery, but when she opened the door, the sight before her froze the blood in her veins. Standing on the porch was Margaret Collins, immaculately dressed, dark-colored dress, her eyes sharp as glass. Beside her stood a young man in a suit, holding a black leather briefcase. "We need to talk," Margaret said, her tone polite, yet laced with threat. Clara tightened her grip on the doorknob. "I don't think there's anything left to say." The young man handed over an envelope. "This is a legal notice. Mrs. Collins is requesting visitation rights with her granddaughter, Emma Duarte." Clara's heart clenched. "Are you out of your mind?" Margaret raised an eyebrow, her voice firm. "I am her rightful grandmother. Even if Edward walked away, I still have rights. Emma deserves to know her family." Clara swallowed hard. Each word from Margaret struck like a hammer against the wall of secrets she had struggled to keep. "Edward never cared about Emma, and neither did you. Why now?" "Because Emma is not only your child. She carries the Collins blood as well," Margaret cut in, her eyes flashing with challenge. Clara felt her knees weaken. Just then, from the corner of the yard, came a faint clatter. Daniel stood there, hammer in hand, his face frozen as he caught fragments of the exchange. Margaret's gaze flicked toward him briefly, assessing, cold. Then she turned back to Clara. "If you don't cooperate, I'll let the court decide. Believe me, I won't hesitate." Clara remained motionless until their figures disappeared beyond the iron gate. Her heart pounded wildly, her mind spinning. In the side hallway, Daniel was still there, his eyes no longer curious, but sharpened with suspicion. "She just mentioned Emma's father, didn't she?" he asked quietly, his voice low and tense. Clara turned away stiffly. "That's none of your concern." But deep down, she knew it herself. From this moment on, her secret was no longer safe. That night, Clara tried to bury herself in legal documents, but every line blurred before her eyes. She could hear the faint hammering in the yard cease, leaving only silence. Behind the house, Daniel was putting tools away. As he shoved a plastic crate into the corner of the shed, a bundle of papers slid to the floor. He bent to pick them up, and his heart stopped. It was a photograph, edges creased, colors faded with time. In it, a young Clara sat in an armchair, cradling a newborn baby. On the back, scribbled words read, "Emma, October 2017. Daniel's hands trembled. October 2017, the very month Clara had vanished from town, the same time she severed every line between them. He sank onto a wooden stool in the shed, drawing a long breath. Memories flooded back. Afternoons beneath the maples. Clara's laughter as she listened to his dreams of a small carpentry shop, the way she held his hand as if nothing could separate them. And then her sudden disappearance. No message, no explanation, only a raw, burning emptiness. Now this photo felt like a missing piece finally clicking into place. Every little detail Emma had shown, the smile, the eyes, the way she held her pencil, screamed a truth Clara had fought to hide. The next day, when Clara stepped into the yard with a folder of documents in hand, Daniel was already waiting. His voice came rough, calm but unyielding. "Clara, I need to ask you something. Emma, is she my daughter?" Clara froze. The folder slipped from her fingers into the grass. For a moment, the wind lifted her hair, but her face stayed rigid. "You don't know what you're saying," she answered, her voice breaking. Daniel took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I know exactly what I'm saying, because every time I look at her, I see myself, and in her eyes, I see you." Clara turned away, forcing her voice into steadiness. "Not now. I don't want to talk about this." But as she walked off, Daniel knew one thing. She could dodge the words, but the truth had already begun to surface, clear as daylight. That night, Clara lay awake, and the memories stormed back uninvited. The smell of damp earth at the farm, Daniel's laughter when she confused the names of flowers, the gentle touch of his hand on her belly before she had the chance to tell him the truth. That might have been their last honest moment together, but at that time her father had declared firmly, "That man will never give you the future you deserve." The pressure was too great, and Clara gave up. She told Daniel she had to leave, and she did, to Manhattan, where she stayed until Emma was born. Across the city, Daniel sat in his cramped room, staring at the old photograph. He couldn't sleep. He didn't want to believe the child was his. But every gesture, every smile, every small detail screamed the truth. He remembered Clara as someone who always dared to speak her mind, except when it came to her family. Now he was working for the very woman who had once left him without a word. Maybe it was coincidence, but deep down he knew destiny had its reasons. 2 days later, the pressure intensified. Clara received an official summons for the preliminary hearing. On the paper, Edward Collins was listed as the child's father. Daniel's name wasn't even mentioned. When he saw her step out of the house carrying the envelope, he asked, That's about Mrs. Margaret Collins, isn't it? It has nothing to do with you. Maybe it does if it has to do with Emma. Clara paused for a moment. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was mistaken, but his steady gaze made her falter. I don't want to argue about this here. Then where? In court? He said quietly but firmly. On Sunday, Emma begged Daniel to help her plant a small garden by the side of the house. Clara agreed, but stayed on the porch to watch. The little girl giggled, flinging soil everywhere, while Daniel patiently explained how to plant the yellow ipe tree. This tree grows very slowly, but when it blooms, no one can ignore it, he told her. Clara heard it. The words sounded like a metaphor she didn't want to face. At the end of the day, as Daniel was putting things away, Clara approached. Do you plan to keep working here? Yes, unless you dismiss me. And what if I say you should? Then I want to know the reason, and coincidence isn't an answer I'll accept. She took a deep breath, about to say something, when Emma ran over holding a drawing. Mom, look, it's me, you, and Daniel under the yellow tree. Clara froze. Daniel smiled unconsciously, but inside he felt that the tree had deeper roots than he had ever imagined. That night, Clara dreamed of the past, the fields, the smell of rain, Daniel's laughter as she clumsily tried to plant a tree for the first time. The feeling of being home, something she had once tried so hard to forget. She woke in the middle of the night, and for the first time in years, she asked herself, was running away really the right choice? During that week, life in the house began to change. Emma seemed to have found a new center in her small universe. Daniel. If he was outside in the yard, she always found an excuse to run near him. Clara noticed, and every time she saw her daughter run toward him, she felt torn between caution and an emotion she dared not name. On Tuesday, Clara left the house early for a meeting, instructing the butler to keep Emma indoors. But when she returned, she found her daughter sitting on the grass beside Daniel, drawing together. "What are you two doing?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "A map of the garden," Emma answered proudly. "Daniel said if we plant flowers along these lines, it will look like a colorful carpet." Daniel only nodded. Clara tightened her grip on the folder in her hand. "Emma, it's time to go inside now." The girl pouted a little, but obeyed. Daniel stood up without saying anything, but Clara noticed that he was observing something. The way her daughter held the pencil, her posture, even the small movement of her hand. Exactly like him. She remembered it well. That evening, Clara received a call from her lawyer. "The hearing is scheduled in 2 weeks. Be prepared." She hung up and looked out the window. Outside, Daniel was locking the side gate, the yellow light from the lamp casting part of his face into view. Unavoidable. Every time she saw him, the past felt closer. On Thursday, Daniel went downtown to buy seeds for the garden. He stopped by a newsstand, bought a cup of coffee, and watched a family sitting in the park. A father, a mother, and a little boy. A lump rose in his throat. In his pocket was still the drawing Emma had given him. He brushed his hand lightly over the paper, remembering her smile when she handed it to him. How could he not think about it? And what if the girl was really his daughter? Meanwhile, Clara tried to convince herself that everything was still under control. But later that night, when she went into Emma's room to say goodnight, she found her writing something in a small notebook. "What are you writing?" she asked. "A letter for Daniel." "A letter? So he knows I like him." Clara froze, taking the notebook and reading quickly. "Daniel, when you come, the garden is happier, and so am I." She closed the notebook. "Tomorrow, let's bring it together, shall we?" she said, forcing herself to stay calm. The next morning, Clara went out to the garden. "Daniel, may I have a word with you?" He set down the hose. "Of course." "I know Emma is a sensitive child, but I want you to understand, she's very impressionable." "I understand," His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. "I don't want her to nurture hopes." "And what if those hopes aren't hers alone?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Clara felt her cheeks burn. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing, just that some truths don't need explanations." Clara turned away. She didn't want to hear more. On Saturday, her defenses finally cracked. Emma fell while running and scraped her knee. Daniel, nearby, immediately rushed over. He knelt down, washed the wound with tap water, and tied his handkerchief around it. Clara arrived just as he lifted the girl in his arms. "It's all right," he said gently. "Just a small scratch." Emma clung tightly to his neck. "Daniel, don't let me go." Clara stood there for a few seconds, feeling as if she were losing a part of the territory that once belonged only to her. That evening, in her room, Emma was looking through an old photo album. Clara entered and saw her daughter pointing to a picture of her as a baby. "Mom, here it looks like Daniel." Clara frowned. "No, sweetheart, he wasn't here back then." "But it looks so much like him." Clara quickly closed the album. "Let's put it away." The court date arrived sooner than Clara had expected. That morning, the city sky hung heavy, gray clouds pressing down on every step she took. Clara wore a dark coat, clutching a folder of documents. Her heart beat in rushed, uneven thumps. Each echo of her heels in the courthouse hallway sounded like a gavel, drawing closer. Daniel was already there. He wore a plain white shirt, dark slacks, his stance firm, though his eyes faltered when they met Clara's. They looked at each other briefly, but neither spoke. On the opposite side, Margaret entered with her attorney, face painted with certainty of victory. She sat upright, her cold gaze sweeping over Clara like a declaration of dominance. The courtroom was cold as the judge struck the gavel. "We are here to examine the petition for visitation rights filed by Mrs. Margaret Collins regarding her granddaughter, Emma." Margaret's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, my client is Emma's rightful grandmother. Though her father, Edward Collins, has abandoned his responsibilities, bloodlines cannot be denied. This child deserves her family." The judge turned to Clara. "Mrs. Duarte, is it true your daughter has had no contact whatsoever with the Collins family?" Clara inhaled sharply, nodded. "Yes, I chose that, because I believed it was best for her." Margaret's attorney stepped forward, voice sharp. "Best? To strip a child of her father, her grandmother? Your Honor, my client seeks only to be present, not to take away." Clara bit her lip, a storm rising inside. The judge frowned. "If the legal father is Edward Collins, why is he not here today?" Margaret faltered briefly, then regained composure. "Edward is abroad, but that does not erase blood." Then the judge's tone hardened. "Mrs. Duarte, answer truthfully. Who is the child's biological father?" The room fell still. Clara felt every eye on her, the judge's, Margaret's, and above all, Daniel's. For a fleeting moment, she battled within. One more lie, or let the truth unravel, no matter the consequences. Her breath quivered. Clara lifted her gaze to the judge, voice breaking. "Emma's father is in this very room." A stunned silence fell, heavier than any gavel strike. Daniel's breath caught, his eyes widening as if time itself had shattered. Margaret's face contorted, rage barely contained. "Identify him!" the judge demanded. Slowly, Clara turned, her trembling eyes finding his. "It's him, Daniel Hayes." The courtroom burst. Daniel could barely form words. "Clara! My God!" Margaret shot to her feet. "Objection! This is a fabrication. He didn't even know the child existed until recently." Clara turned to her, tears welling. "Yes, he didn't know, because I hid it. I was afraid of my family, afraid of losing everything, and I forced him out of my life." The judge raised a hand for silence. Given this revelation, the court orders an immediate DNA test. Proceedings are adjourned until results are returned. Leaving the courtroom, Clara walked quickly down the corridor, but Daniel caught up with her. "Why, Clara? Why did you hide it from me?" "I already told you, because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "I would never turn my back on you and the girl." She stopped, looking straight into his eyes. "You don't understand, Daniel. You don't know how terrifying my family can be. They could have destroyed you, and in the end, I destroyed myself instead." Clara said nothing more. She stepped into the elevator, leaving Daniel standing alone in the long corridor. After the hearing, the atmosphere between Clara and Daniel felt like a minefield. She avoided his eyes, and he didn't force her to talk, but the looks they exchanged spoke louder than any words. Meanwhile, Emma remained blissfully unaware, spending her days chattering about Daniel as if nothing had changed. But in truth, everything had. That evening, while Clara was answering emails, she heard a noise from her daughter's room. "Mom!" Emma's voice was weak. Clara dropped her laptop and rushed in. The girl was curled under the blanket, her face flushed, sweat beading across her forehead. "My stomach hurts, and my head too." Clara touched her forehead. It was burning hot. She took her temperature, 39 degrees. She quickly gave her fever medicine, applied cold compresses, and tried calling the doctor, but no one answered. The clinic lines were overwhelmed. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and called Daniel. "Help me, it's Emma. She has a high fever." Without a second's doubt, he replied, "I'm on my way." Less than 20 minutes later, Daniel arrived. He wore a t-shirt, sweatpants, and carried a backpack. "Where is she?" he asked as he stepped inside. They went upstairs together. Emma lay on the bed, her face pale, her breathing shallow. When she saw him, she whispered, "Daniel." He knelt beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. "Easy now, princess. I'm here." He opened his backpack, pulled out clean cloths and a cool water spray, and began gently wiping her down. Clara brought a basin of cold water and some drinking water. They took turns caring for her, cooling her body, and watching every breath through the long hours of the night. Around 3 a.m, the fever finally began to subside. Emma drifted into sleep, exhausted but stable. Clara sank onto the floor, drained. Daniel looked at her. "You don't need to thank me." Clara's voice broke, a confession she had buried for too long slipping free. "I know I was wrong, but tonight, sitting there watching her burn with fever, I realized I can't keep you away from her anymore. Not without breaking her, not without breaking myself." Daniel's eyes softened with emotion. "Then stop pushing me away." Clara nodded. For the first time, her voice held no resistance. After tucking the blanket around her daughter, she turned to him. "Will you stay until morning?" "Of course," he smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." They went down to the kitchen together. The silence between them was no longer distance, but an unspoken understanding. Clara broke it first. "Have you always known how to take care of someone like this?" "My mother taught me. When I was little, we had no doctor nearby, so she had to manage everything on her own." Clara smiled faintly, then glanced away. She would have loved Emma. Daniel sipped his coffee and murmured, "I think so too." The final day of the trial unfolded beneath a gray morning sky, clouds stretching over Manhattan. Clara woke before her alarm. She brewed coffee, but couldn't bring herself to drink it. Every passing minute dragged back memories of the first time she had stepped into court, and with them, the anxiety of what was to come. Daniel arrived early. He wore a crisp white shirt, dark trousers, his hair neatly combed. He didn't say much, only looked at Clara and said, "Let's go together." They reached the courthouse and met Margaret Collins at the entrance. This time, her usual combative glare was gone. She nodded at Clara and Daniel, a silent gesture of respect. The hearing began right on time. The judge announced, "We will review the petition regarding custody and the legal recognition of Emma Duarte's biological father." Clara's lawyer presented psychological reports. Daniel's report showed that his bond with his daughter had formed quickly and positively. The social worker confirmed the child felt safe with both parents. Margaret Collins silently observed everything. "Mr. Daniel Hayes," the judge addressed him, "the DNA test has confirmed you are the biological father. What do you seek in this court today?" "I want to be officially recognized as her father and to be present in my daughter's life every day possible." "Mrs. Clara Duarte, do you agree?" Clara took a deep breath. "I agree." The judge jotted down a few notes. "Mrs. Margaret Collins, do you still wish to pursue partial custody?" Her voice softened. "No, Your Honor, I only wish to remain close to my granddaughter." The courtroom sank into solemn silence. The judge looked at each of them before delivering the decision. The court rules as follows. Primary custody is granted to the mother, Mrs. Clara Duarte. The father, Mr. Daniel Hayes, is legally recognized with flexible visitation rights and an active role in his daughter's life. The grandmother, Mrs. Margaret Collins, is guaranteed regular visitation. Clara released a breath she had been holding through the entire hearing. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing over him. The judge added, "Before we conclude, let me remind you, no legal ruling can replace cooperation and mutual respect. A child grows stronger when she witnesses love, not conflict." Leaving the courthouse, Clara felt as though she had shed a heavy suit of armor. Daniel walked beside her, unhurried. At the entrance, Ramona, the housemaid, waited with Emma. The moment she saw her father, the little girl ran to him. "Is it over, Dad?" "It's over, Princess," Daniel said, lifting her into his arms. "So now it's official. You're really my dad." "But I've always been your dad," he laughed. "In my heart, you've always been my dad," Emma grinned. Clara smiled, eyes brimming with tears. Margaret Collins stepped forward, embracing her granddaughter. "And I am your grandmother. I always will be." The four of them stood together, like a family. Still holding Emma, Daniel turned to Clara. "Thank you for not shutting me out of her life." "Thank you for staying," she replied. Margaret drew a long breath, as if closing her own journey. "Perhaps. It's time we learn how to be a family in our own way." Back home, Daniel and Emma ran straight to the garden. She wanted to show him the yellow IP tree they had planted weeks ago. The leaves were still young, but already growing strong. "See, Dad? It's getting bigger." "Just like us, my girl, slowly but strong." From the porch, Clara watched them with eyes full of warmth. The scene was simple, but more precious than any success she had ever achieved in her career. That evening, the whole family cooked dinner together. Daniel chopped vegetables, Clara set the table, and Emma arranged the spoons and chopsticks. The kitchen was filled with a gentle warmth, laughter bubbling up now and then. Margaret Collins arrived late, carrying dessert. During the meal, Emma looked up at everyone and said, "I think now our family is finally complete." Daniel smiled. Clara felt her heart grow warm. Margaret nodded in agreement. That night, Clara tucked her daughter into bed. "Mom, will Dad be here tomorrow?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Then I can sleep peacefully." The little girl hugged her teddy bear and closed her eyes. Stepping out of the room, Clara found Daniel sitting in the living room, holding a small wooden box. He took out Emma's first drawing, the picture of the two of them holding hands in the garden. "I kept this because that's when everything began," he said, showing it to Clara. "Now it's just the beginning of a new chapter," she replied, sitting beside him. "A chapter we'll build together," he said. For the first time, she did not hesitate. "Welcome home, Daniel."